Yeah, we got it. Well, good morning. It's been a couple of weeks. This week we didn't have it because it was Pentecost Sunday and
And see, I, so you can
it was just way too much going on.
I missed.
Way too much going on. And looking at my calendar, I'm gonna be pretty busy for till November. So Karen and I are trying to figure out, where we're gonna slide up from there. Anyway. Um, we are still in that what we call a pseudepigraphal book. It's not part of the Apocrypha, so it's not one of those that is it not?
But it is in the NRSV Bible.
Not what we're reading.
Teacher.
Yeah, he's here.
He got bored with him.
Yeah, on video, it's gonna show me walking down the the what we're reading right now is called The Story of a High. We finished with Tobit a few classes ago, but at the end of Tobit, there was this reference to remember what a high car did, or what happened to a high car, and don't let that happen again. And so right now we're in the story of a high car because it kind of I'm one of those, when we get into the Kings and the Chronicles, and they mention, hey, all these things were written in this book. Well, what book? We don't have access to those books, but when we do have at least some kind of legendary, which is what I believe Story of a High Car is, um, we can, and we have access to it. I like to kind of give some context to what they're talking about. Well, we went through the first chapter of a high car where we find out that he is the vizier of King Sennacherib of Assyria, which is like the second or third in command of the whole kingdom. Okay, in a sense, he could be called his cupbearer, but it's kind of like his chief of state. That would be the best description. And a high car, or in this text, high car. It's an Arabic text that's been translated in English. He doesn't have a child to pass on, as an heir. Doesn't have a son. So what he's done is he's taken his nephew under his wing, Nadab, and taught. And so that's where we ended the first chapter of the high car a couple weeks ago. So we're going to start with chapter 2. There's 7 chapters of it. So we won't finish it this week. We'll definitely finish it next week. But we're going to get through quite a bit. Now, the second chapter are all these kinds of proverbs kind of things at least I don't think we did this. Anyway, if it sounds familiar, let me know. Okay. And I never can keep up with, I'm always weeks ahead on my lessons. So I think this is where we left off. But the second chapter is going to sound like Proverbs. It's just a bunch of Proverbs to this child Nadab. Okay.
Any good ones?
Some of them will sound familiar. Anyway, let me go ahead and get started so we can get through this and share screen. Okay.
Oh, my child.
Yeah.
A fire of a frog.
Oh.
Frog.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we did go through part of chapter 2. Okay. I seem to recall seeing some of these proverbs the last time we read. And so yeah, we're continuing on. We stopped in the middle of the chapter. So chapter 2, verses 49. Oh, my child, the thigh of a frog in thy hand is better than a goose in the pot of thy neighbor. And a sheep near thee is better than an ox far away. And a sparrow in thy hand is better than 1,000 sparrows flying.
What's he smoking?
Well, when things don't make sense, read further. Okay. And poverty which gathers is better than the scattering of much provision. And a living fox is better than a dead lion. And a pound of wool is better than a pound of wealth. I mean, of gold and silver. For the gold and the silver are hidden and covered up in the earth and are not seen, but the wool stays in the markets. And why is there a period there? And it is seen, and it is a beauty to him who wears it. Okay, so the meaning, the underlying meaning of this particular proverb falls in the middle of it. It has to do with provision. It's better to have these things near you than to have something far away that can't, that you have no access to. Okay.
Yeah.
It's better to have, a small, the fox, where it says, a living fox is better than a dead lion. Well, a living fox, even though it's small amount of food that they could kill for food, the dead lion is no good to them because the meat is tarnished.
Oh,
You see what I mean? It's a lot of food, but it doesn't do them any good because it's tarnished. So it has to do with provision. It's better for you to have things close, to have a little thing, a little bit of something close at hand than it is to have a lot of stuff that you have no access to.
But when you're going down the road, you figure it's better a dead skunk in the middle of the road than an angry bear. And
Okay.
ride it down.
Yeah. I would say a more contextual to me would be if I'm driving from here to El Paso. So it's better for me to stop and fill up when my tank reaches 3/4 of a tank than it is to wait further on and hope I can get to the next gas station before my
yes,
tank goes empty.
yes.
Okay.
Miles and miles. but nothing.
Right. Right. Yeah, we came close one time. We were getting nervous. We had to be running on fumes, so. Oh, my son, a small fortune is better than a scattered fortune. Oh, my son, a living dog is better than a dead poor man. Oh, my son, a poor man who does right is better than a rich man who is dead in sins. What does that one sound like?
Sounds like an advertisement for a bank.
Maybe, yeah. Verse 52 sounds a lot like the story, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man and Lazarus. I think it's in the book of Matthew. Oh, my son, I keep a word in thy heart, and it shall be much to thee, and beware lest thou reveal the secret of thy friend.
Oh,
Oh, my son, let not a word issue from thy mouth till thou hast taken counsel with thy heart, and stand not betwixt, that's a nice old word there, betwixt persons quarreling, because from a bad word there comes a quarrel, and from a quarrel there comes war, and from war there comes fighting, and thou wilt be forced to bear witness. But run from thence and rest thyself.
It's like it, yeah.
Basically, it's if you have nothing to do with it, stay out of it. Oh, my son, withstand not a man stronger than thyself, but get thee a patient spirit and endurance and an upright conduct, for there is nothing more excellent than that. That's kind of like the parable of, or the fairy tale story of the rabbit and the turtle, the hare and the tortoise. And the
Rabbit and the turtle.
Oh, my son, I hate not thy first friend, for the second one may not last.
well, I hate your friends.
Yeah. Oh, my son, visit the poor in his affliction, and speak of him in the sultan's presence, and do thy diligence to save him from the mouth of the lion. Look good in the eyes of your boss. Oh, my son, rejoice not in the death of thine enemy, for after a little while thou shalt be his neighbor, and him who mocks thee do thou respect and honor, and be beforehand with him in greeting. You never know if your former enemy is going to become your future friend. Oh, my son, if water would stand still in heaven, and a black crow become white, and myrrh grow sweet as honey, then ignorant men and fools might understand and become wise. Ooh, that's a deep one.
Yeah.
Oh, my son, if thou desire to be wise, restrain thy tongue from lying, and thy hand from stealing, and thine eyes from beholding evil. Then thou wilt be called wise.
And Lord.
Oh, my son, let the wise man beat thee with a rod, but let not the fool anoint thee with sweet salve. Be humble in thy youth, and thou shalt be honored in thine old age. Listen, your elders may be strict and tough, but it's better that you grow up in that kind of environment than it is to have somebody just tell you everything you ever want to hear, and be spoiled. I know it's nice to be spoiled, but you got to understand the context of which this is written. Oh, my son, withstand not a man in the days of his power, nor a river in the days of its flood. Yeah, wait for the waters to recede before you try to cross that raging river. Oh, my son, be not hasty in the wedding of a wife, for if it turns out well, she will say, my Lord, make provision for me. And if it turns out ill, she will rate at him who was the cause of it. Oh, my son, whosoever is elegant in his dress, he is the same in his speech. And he who has a mean appearance in his dress, he also is the same in his speech. Yeah, that one's a tough one because you're basing basing your first impression on how someone looks. That one's a tough. Oh, my son, if thou hast committed a theft, make it known to the Sultan and give him a share of it, that thou mayst be delivered from him, for otherwise thou wilt endure bitterness. Yeah, if you're going to steal from the state, give them a cut.
Amen.
Oh, my son, make a friend of the man whose hand is satisfied and filled, and make no friend of the man whose hand is closed and hungry. Again, some of these are tough, but you got to understand the context by which it's being written. They're living in a communist society.
Controlled.
There are 4 things in which neither the king nor his army can be secure: oppression by the vizier and bad government, and perversion of the will and tyranny over the sun. Yeah, those 4 things won't last, or they won't. You'll end up dying because of it. That bad government. That's kind of funny. And 4 things which cannot be hidden: the prudent and the foolish and the rich. Chapter 3. Now we get back into the narrative of this. Thus spake Hikar. And when he had finished these injunctions and proverbs to Nadin, his sister's son, he imagined that he would keep them all, and he knew not that instead of that, he was displaying to him weariness, contempt, and mockery. So Nadin is taking all that, he's listening, but he's not following. Okay. So we kind of know where this story is going at this point. Thereafter, Hikar sat still in his house and delivered over to Nadin all his goods and the slaves and the handmaidens and the horses and the cattle and everything else that he had possessed and gained, and the power of bidding and of forbidding remained in the hand of Nadin. And Hikar sat at rest in his house, and every now and then Hikar went and paid his respects to the king and returned home. What's happening is Hikar is getting old of age, and King Sennacherib has said, "Hey, who's going to replace you? Who do you recommend?" Usually it's something that's passed down. There's nepotism is very strong these days. That's why you had the kings, their sons followed in place. So, with Israel, it was an ordained kind of thing, an anointed kind of thing. But in these other nations, it was just the nature of how it worked. You kept power in your family. So what Hikar has to do is find a person to replace him. And in order for him to keep in the family, he's got to resort to his nephew. Now, when Nadin perceived that the power of bidding and of forbidding was in his own hand, he despised the position of Hikar and scoffed at him, and set about blaming him whenever he appeared, saying, "My uncle Hikar is in his dotage, and he knows nothing." And he began to beat the slaves and the handmaidens, and to sell the horses and the camels, and be spendthrift with all that his uncle Hikar did. And when Hikar saw that he had no compassion on his servants nor on his household, he arose and chased him from his house, and sent to inform the king that he had scattered his possessions and his provision. Now, keep in mind, remember those proverbs that we learned. There were quite a few that had to do with provision, of keeping provision nearby, even if it was small, it was something you had, rather than all the provision being spread out with no access to it. And here, this is exactly what he's done. And the king arose and called Nadin and said to him, whilst Hikar remains in health, no one shall rule over his goods, nor over his household, nor over his possessions. That's not good. And the hand of Nadin was lifted off from his uncle Hikar and from all his goods. And in the meantime, he went neither in nor out, nor did he greet him. Thereupon Hikar repented him of his toil with Nadin his sister's son, and he continued to be very sorrowful. And Nadin had a younger brother named Benuzardin. So Benuzardin. So Hikar took him to himself in place of Nadin, and brought him up and honored him with the utmost honor. And he delivered over to him all that he possessed, and made him governor of his house. Okay, so Well, my oldest nephew, he's a no good. Bleep, 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 bleep. So I'm gonna drop him and take his younger brother, my other nephew.
Well, I hope he has my up.
Yeah, well, you know how it is with younger brothers. Now, when Nathan perceived what had happened, he was seized with envy and jealousy. And he began to complain to everyone who questioned him and to mock his uncle Icar, saying, my uncle has chased me from his house and has preferred my brother to me. But if the Most High God give me the power, I shall bring upon him the misfortune of being killed.
Wow.
When you invoke the name of God for the wrong reasons, that is, blaspheming God. Yeah. And Nathan continued to meditate as to the stumbling block he might contrive for him. And after a while, Nathan turned it over in his mind and wrote a letter to Achish, son of Shah the Wise, king of Persia, saying thus: peace and health and might and honor from Sennacherib, king of Assyria and Nineveh, and from his vizier and his secretary Hicar unto thee, O great king. Let there be peace between thee and me. He's writing a letter of which he has no power or authority to do so. And when this letter reaches thee, if thou wilt arise and go quickly to the plain of Nisrin and to Assyria and Nineveh, I will deliver up the kingdom to thee without war and without battle array. Hey, I know we haven't liked each other very much. You know what? We're just going to unconditionally surrender and give you everything. Just meet us here. And he wrote also another letter in the name of Hicar, Pharaoh, king of Egypt. That's the other direction. Let there be peace between thee and me, O my king. If at the time of this letter reaching thee, thou wilt arise and go to Assyria and Nineveh to the plain of Nisrin, and I will deliver up to thee the kingdom without war and without fighting. So he writes the same letter to Pharaoh, the other direction.
Let them come together.
And the writing of Nathan was like to the writing of his uncle Hicar. Then he folded the two letters and sealed them with the seal of his uncle Hicar. They were nevertheless in the king's palace. Then he went and wrote a letter likewise from the king to his uncle Hicar. Peace and health to my vizier, my secretary, my chancellor, Hicar. Hicar, when this letter reaches thee, assemble all the soldiers who are with thee. Let them be perfect in clothing and in numbers, and bring them to me on the 5th day in the plain of Nisrin. And when thou shalt see me there coming towards thee, haste and make the army move against me as an enemy who would fight with me. For I have with me the ambassadors of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that they may see the strength of our army and may fear us, for they are our enemies and they hate us. You don't like me, uncle? Then I'm going to create a war for you. I'm not going to take any part of it. Then he sealed the letter and sent it to Hicar by one of the king's servants. And he took the other letter which he had written and spread it before the king, read it to him, and showed him the seal. Yeah, he used his uncle's signet to, now he's taking it before the king. And when the king heard what was in the letter, he was perplexed with great perplexity. Well, that's a great way to be perplexed. And was wroth with a great and fierce wrath, and said, I have shown my wisdom. Idiot. What have I done to Hicar? He has written these letters to my enemies. Is this my recompense for him, for my benefits to him? And Nathan said to him, be not grieved, O king, nor be wroth, but let us go to the plain of Nisrin and see if the tale be true or not. Then Nathan arose on the 5th day and took the king and the soldiers and the vizier, and they went to the desert to the plain of Nisrin. And the king looked, and lo, Hicar and the army were set in array. Now, you've got to understand this. You've got Egypt coming from one direction to the plain of Nisrin. You've got Persia or Iran coming from the other direction to the plain of Nisrin. They're all decked out in battle gear. And then you've got Assyria's army coming out in their dress blues.
No weapons.
No, right. They're there for show, not for right. And when Hicar saw that the king was there, he approached and signaled to the army to move as in war and to fight in array against the king as it had been found in the letter. He not knowing what a pit Nathan had digged for him. So all these soldiers dressed in their finest array, their finest clothes, get out there, and all of a sudden they realize, we've been duped. We need to go to battle. And they're not prepared. So they're trying to do battle maneuvers in their dress clothes. And when the king saw the act of Hicar, he was seized with anxiety and terror and perplexity, and was wroth with a great wrath. So the king don't know what to think here.
I told him not to be wroth up there.
Yes. Otherwise he'd have wrath.
Yeah.
A lot of these wrath, wroth, wretch, And Nathan said to him, Hast thou seen, O my lord the king, what this wretch has done? But be not thou wroth, and be not grieved nor pained. But go to thy house and sit on thy throne, and I will bring Highcar to thee, bound and chained with chains. That's a nice way to be chained, with chains. Yeah. And I will chase away thine enemy from thee without toil. Hey, we're going to rope him with rope. And the king returned to his throne, being provoked about Highcar, did nothing concerning him. Nathan went to Highcar and said to him, Voila, O my uncle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Voila.
Voila. The king,
Voila.
yeah. With that word Allah there, remember this is translated from an Arabic text into English. So my guess is, oh my God, my uncle, is I think what that means. The king verily rejoices in thee, and great joy and thanks thee for having done what he commanded thee. Boy, he's really laying it on thick. And now he has sent me to thee that thou mayest dismiss the soldiers to their duties and come thyself to him with thy hands bound behind thee and thy feet chained, that the ambassadors of Pharaoh may see this and that the king may be feared by them and by their king. Boy, this Nathan, he got taught right, and he applied it in the wrong ways. And
He's wrong with right.
I don't know what happened to the font there. I was using the same font, then all of a sudden.
Allegedly.
They then answered Highcar and said, To hear is to obey. And he arose straightway and bound his hands behind him and chained his. And Nathan took him and went with him to the king. And when Highcar entered the king's presence, he did obeisance before him on the ground and wished for power, perpetual life the king. Then said the king, O Highcar, my secretary, the governor of my affairs, my chancellor, the ruler of my state, tell me what evil have I done to thee that thou hast rewarded me by this ugly deed? Then they showed him the letters in his writing and with his seal. And when Highcar saw this, his limbs trembled and his tongue was tied at once, and he was unable to speak a word from fear, but he hung his head towards the earth and was dumb. He finally realizes the extent, how far native has really gone. And he's speechless.
He's done.
Yeah, that too.
That too.
And when the king saw this, he felt certain that the thing was from him. And he straightway arose and commanded them to kill Highcar and strike his neck with the sword outside of the city. Then Nathan screamed and said, O Highcar, O blackface, what avails thee thy meditations or thy power in the doing of this deed of the king? Thus says the storyteller. And the name of the swordsman was Abu Samik. And the king said to him, O swordsman, arise, go, cleave the neck of Highcar at the door of his house, and cast away his head from his body 100 cubits. That would be about 300 feet. Well, no, hang on. A cubit's about 18 inches, so
There wasn't attached anymore.
180.
There you go.
1,800 inches. Just throw it.
Yeah.
Then Highcar knelt before the king and said, Let my lord the king live forever. And if thou desire to slay me, let thy wish be fulfilled. And I know that I am not guilty, but the wicked man has to give an account of his wickedness. Nevertheless, now it's changed back then. Oh, what's going on there? Nevertheless, O my lord the king, I beg of thee and of thy friendship, permit the swordsman to give my body to my slaves, that they may bury me, and let thy slave be thy sacrifice. The king arose and commanded the swordsman to do with him according to his desire. And he straightway commanded his servants to take Highcar and the swordsman and go with him naked that they might slay him. And when Highcar knew for certain that he was to be slain, he sent to his wife and said to her, Come out and meet me, and let there be with thee 1,000 young virgins, and dress them in gowns of purple and silk, that they may weep for me for my death. And prepare a table for the swordsman and for his servants, and mingle plenty of wine that they may drink. And she did all that he commanded her. And she was very wise, clever, and prudent, and she united all possible courtesy and learning. And when the army of the king and the swordsman arrived, they found the table set in order, and the wine and luxurious viands, and they began eating and drinking till they were gorged and drunken. Then Highcar took the swordsman aside, apart from the company, and said, O Abu Samik, dost thou not know that when Sarhadum, the king, the father of Sennacherib, wanted to kill thee, I took thee and hid thee in a certain place where the king's anger subsided, and he asked for thee, Hey, swordsman, you remember way back when the dad of the king now wanted to kill you, and I protected you and saved you? Remember that? And when I brought thee into his presence, he rejoiced in thee, and now remembered the kindness I did thee. And I know that the king will repent to him about me and will be wroth with a great wrath about my execution. When the king, remember all that? Now, if you do this, and when the king realizes what has really happened, he's going to be mad at you. For I am not guilty. And it shall be when thou shalt present me before him in his palace, thou shalt meet with great good fortune, and know that Nadin, my sister's son, has deceived me and has done this bad deed to me, and the king will repent of having slain me. And now I have a cellar in the garden of my house, and no one knows it. Where did that come in?
It was a secret.
Well, I think what's happening is, hey, get me out of this, and that garden is yours. Property was a big deal, especially if it was property of a high-ranking member of this. Hide me in it with the knowledge of my wife, and I have so now we see, hide it in it. Nobody else knows about it. Put me in there, and nobody left me. And I have a slave in prison who deserves to be killed. Bring him out, dress him in my clothes, and command the servants when they are drunk to slay him. They will not know who it is they are killing. Yeah. Case of mistaken identity. Intentionally mistaken identity. And cast away his head 100 cubits from his body, and give his body to my slaves that they may bury it. And thou shalt have laid up a great treasure with me.
Well,
This is how we get out of this, Abu.
Have somebody else kill him for you.
Right. And then the swordsman did as Hikar commanded him, and he went to the king and said to him, "May thy head live forever." Then Hikar's wife let down to him in the hiding place every week what sufficed for him, and no one knew of it but herself. And the story was reported and repeated and spread abroad in every place of how Hikar the sage had been slain and was dead, and all the people of that city mourned for him. And they wept and said, "Alas for thee, O Hikar, for thy learning and thy courtesy, how sad about thee and about thy knowledge. Where can another like thee be found? And where can there be a man so intelligent, so learned, so skilled in ruling as to resemble thee, that he may fill thy place?" But the king was repenting about Hikar, and his repentance availed not. Then he called for Nadan and said to him, "Go and take thy friends with thee, and make a mourning and a weeping for thy Hikar, and lament for him as the custom is, doing honor to his memory." But when Nadan, the foolish, the ignorant, the hard-hearted, I think the storyteller here is being thorough. Description of Nadan went to the house of his uncle. He neither wept nor sorrowed nor wailed, but assembled heartless and dissolute people and set about eating for him. And Nadan began to seize the maidservants and the slaves belonging to Hikar, and bound them and tortured them and drubbed them with a sword drubbing. And he did not respect the wife of his uncle. She who had brought him up like her own boy, but wanted her to fall into sin with him. So he raped his aunt. He raped Hikar's wife. But Hikar had been cast into the hiding place, and he heard the weeping of his slaves and his neighbors, and he praised the Most High God, the Merciful One, and gave thanks. And he always prayed and besought the Most High God. And the swordsman came from time to Hikar, whilst he was in the midst of the hiding place. And Hikar came and entreated him, and he comforted him and wished his deliverance. And when the story was reported in other countries that Hikar the sage had been slain, all the kings were grieved and despised King Sennacherib, and they lamented over Hikar the solver of riddles. Aha! It's nice that the chapter would end on that note, the solver of riddles, because next week, the riddles of the Sphinx, what really happened to Hikar, is returned.
What really happened?
The letter of the riddles is shown to Hikar. The boy is on the Eagles, the first airplane ride, and it's kind of off to Egypt. The Hikar being the man of wisdom, also has a sense of humor. So,
how do you drug so far?
beat them. Beat them. Yeah, with a stick. You've never had a drubbing?
I never got a brother.
You must have been a good boy.
No,
He got it switched to the legs.
that was a switch, it wasn't a drug.
I got one
Yeah,
switch too.
So-
It's his
I
own
had to
switch.
go cut it off the tree.
We can certainly see some biblical parallels to this story. The child of a great leader becoming evil and doing evil towards his uncle or his father or whatever. We can certainly see parallels there. But yes, this is, we can tell through the Arabic translation that this is a legend, not necessarily a true story. The Assyrians kept really, really good records. Nowhere is there, a Hikar's mentioned, but nowhere is the story mentioned. Now, that could be part of it could be true. We don't know. I've learned that there's usually some element of truth to something, regardless of how far-fetched it might be, something caused it to be written. But, you know, you have to think, would Sennacherib have allowed something to be written that made him look bad? Probably not. So you could take that with a grain of salt, but at the same time, trying to, I don't know, I didn't do that deep research to see if Nadin was in any of the Assyrian records, but if he is, maybe it was a way to explain Nadim's disposition, so, anyway. So we'll finish it, I think we'll finish it up next week, if not, it'll certainly be the week after, but, so the story continues, things get fun as I read what we're gonna get into next week. The solver, the riddle of the Sphinx, we really don't read about Sphinx, it's the riddle of what all happened with these letters. Okay? Nadab writing these letters to this king. A Haikar figures it out. He finally figures it out, and Sennacherib figures it out. But that sense of humor is going to be kind of neat. So I do encourage you to hang around for the rest of the story, like Paul arguments. But anyway, any questions, concerns, criticisms, complaints?
The rest of the story.
Rules the raw.
You're over Roth.
You're Roth with wrath like a wretch. Okay, yeah, go get drugged.
We're gonna drug it.
Driven.
Jumping.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. God bless everyone. See y'all in worship.